Welcome into the Your Illini Nation pregame show. Andy Olson and Jared Piper with you here on scene in West Lafayette. The game of the night around the country. Number 1 Purdue taking on number 9 Illinois. Derek, this one is one that I think a lot of people have been looking to for a very long time, and should be a very fun environment here inside Mackey Arena. I've already seen some orange and blue smattered around this historic arena. I think the only place to start as we get going on this pregame show, not will Illinois pull off the upset, can they pull off the upset?
I think they can, yeah, sure. If they continue to play the way that they did against Northwestern on Tuesday, which has been an offense that's just operating at a super high clip, the ability to move the ball, to make threes, to create mismatches with the booty ball they're playing right now, Marcus Damask, being able to have that size advantage, being able to shoot over smaller defenders, back guys down, create double team actions when you don't want to leave them on an island. I think we'll dive into this more, but I think the matchups are super fascinating in this particular game, knowing that obviously Zach Edey's in one matchup that any time that he takes the court, you're going to wonder, okay, how do we deal with this guy? So that's always a question. But I think Illinois offensively against Zach, whether he's going to check Coleman Hawkins, who's a big man that can stretch you out, can make threes, that's kind of can put Purdue in a dilemma. What are some potential pivots for Matt Painter as far as that goes? Would he even have Zach Edey shade Ty Rodgers? So to answer your original question, if Illinois is able to continue this streak of where 3 straight games they've made 10-plus threes. They've scored 90-plus in 3 straight games. Do I expect them to score 90 here? No, but I will say this as well. You think back to the 2020-2021 season, and Io DeSumo-less Illinois went to Michigan, faced the number 2 Wolverines. Seemed like really unlikely that Illinois would get that done against Michigan without their star. They not only won, but they blew out Michigan in that one. So I wouldn't expect Illinois to, even if they do win, to obviously blow out the Boilers, but just felt like there was a certain momentum and unstoppableness to that team that maybe Illinois has on their side right now. I think in terms of the momentum and just the way that they're playing and feeling about each other, this is probably the best time, absence of Terrence Shannon, that you could face Purdue. Obviously, you'd love to have Terrence back, but that's not your reality right now. I do think Illinois can do it, but there is obviously a reason the point spread right now is 10.5.
There is reason for that. You just watched the broadcast crew go behind us. Robbie Hummel, of course, on the call tonight, breaking out the big guns for this one. We'll see how unbiased he is, Purdue versus Illinois in this one.
I'm sure people on Twitter and the message boards will let us know.
I'm sure they will. Last time Illinois beat number 1, Eddie Griffey, was that back 2013? 2013. Here's the thing. Illinois has beaten number 1 in the country 3 times in their program's history. Just never on the road.
Right.
So we'll see how that maybe can change today. But the biggest thing, of course, is replacing that production from Terrence Shannon, still suspended. No updates on that from the university as of now. But they've had no problem replacing that production through 2 games without them. 200 combined points in the 2 games without Shannon. Like you said, not sure that's going to happen again tonight. This is a very difficult Purdue team, but Marcus Damask, Quincy Guerrier, Coleman Hawkins, Justin Harmon, guys that have been there, done that, and stepping up again for the Illini when they need it.
Yeah, and that list is all 4-year or 5-year players. When you think about the grad transfers that have come in, and then obviously Coleman being a 4th-year guy. So they have been in those moments. Maybe haven't been in a situation where they've been relied upon outside of Marcus and Justin, obviously lower levels in terms of mid or low major programs where they were more prominent pieces. But in terms of doing it on this stage against this level of competition, this is a new type of situation for all those guys. But the great thing is when you have a number of different pieces working at the same time, there's less of an emphasis. You don't have to ask Marcus Damask, even though he did it without your begging for it against Northwestern. Hey, can you give us 32 points? Now, obviously, he's capable because he's done 30-plus twice this season. But I just love the fact that it's mixing together beautifully right now with the fact that Coleman, who we've waited to see, could he be a consistent 3-point shooter? That's been a question throughout the course of much of his career. Last 4 games, he's shooting 50% from 3. Quincy Guerrier continues to go on a hot streak of shooting from the outside, but also being able to drive it and go to the rim as well. Mix that in with what Marcus is doing. Justin Harmon's hit 8 threes in the last 2 games. I think Ty's been more aggressive, more confident on offense. Just a lot going for Illinois right now. And I just love that offensively there's such a synergy about them. They're able to to move the ball, to have an unselfishness, be able to make the extra pass. And right now it's looking like beautiful basketball. Now Purdue, not only, I think we focus a lot offensively with what they do for good reason because they got Zach Edey and some good shooters, but defensively, they are top 10 in the country defensive efficiency. They've done a really good job at limiting teams from beyond the three-point line. And then, oh, by the way, they got 7'4" waiting for you in the paint if you decide to try to go downhill. So Purdue, number one in the country, and a lot going for them as far as that goes. But with Illinois' offense, there's a lot to like with the recent form. Still a small sample size, but again, just kind of the momentum that they're riding going into this, what they're doing at that end of the floor. You got to like that if you're an Illini fan.
Like I said, a lot of orange and blue here in Mackey Arena. I think that has to do with Purdue being the closest geographical school to Champaign, just a 90-minute drive over here to West Lafayette. But I think my favorite color is speaking out. I'm seeing some SIU Salukis gear as well.
Is that right?
Gets us into some of the matchups tonight. Marcus Damask, SIU transfer. Purdue's got their own starter who's an SIU transfer as well. Lance Jones, I know Brett Behrens likes that. He's a Salukis grad too. Derek, getting into those matchups, there's a lot of really interesting ones. You've already talked about how Illinois has won these past two games. That's what we're calling booty ball. I think we're maybe taking that and running with it since Brad Underwood used them last year to describe Jalen Pickett. And we just haven't given up yet on calling it.
I'm not giving up. Never.
We're going to make it
This
happen.
booty ball ain't going to quit. Brett Behrens, you're going to appreciate that.
It will never quit until Brad Underwood stops using it. We're going to continue using it. But that's what they've done the past two games. Hit their 2-point shots, some timely threes in there as well because you have the defense spread out. You have to think then, what is Purdue going to do about that? Because you mentioned having 7'4" inside. It's great and all. But if Illinois starts Coleman Hawkins and they take him out from inside, are they going to have Zach Edey follow him outside? Are you going to – I don't think they're going to play zone, Derek. But, are you going to keep him inside and leave Coleman open for those threes? The matchups to me are what's most interesting in this game.
Yeah, again, they're very, very fascinating. I don't think Zach's going to get out to the three-point line. I think that Coleman is someone that if that matchup is – which probably going to draw early, he's going to have some quality looks from beyond the arc. And if he steps up and makes them, shoots them with confidence, shoots them in rhythm, then that's going to be a very quality look for Illinois that they're going to live with and be willing to take plenty of those because a guy that 50%, again, over the last 4 games and just has really settled in nicely as far as the rhythm offensively that he has. And if Zach ventures a little bit too far outside of the paint, not the most quick-footed guy. I mean, who would be at 7'4" and then 300 pounds? So Coleman's ability to put the ball on the deck a little bit, drive him would also be an asset. So what's the pivot? What's the pivot for Purdue? I think that it's something that Matt Painter, and if I'm looking at it their side, what I'd be trying to explore a little bit is trying to say, all right, Zach, your responsibility is Ty Rodgers. Kind of mirror him a little bit. Now, don't go out to the perimeter with him, but we know Ty is not taking three-point jump shots. Mid-range jump shots, not something he's really looking to take as well. Can you sit in that 12 to 15-foot range and really just kind of mirror his movements and then obviously go out and help a little bit in terms of if action comes your way and whatnot? I know that Illinois could then try to use Ty as a screener and try to set up some 2-on-1 type of situations if you don't have a guy following Ty. But that's kind of one of the things I wonder about if maybe that's Purdue's counter. Now, Illinois, if there's a situation, you want Ty on the floor because
Sure.
And we could play back and forth, chess match. If you move this piece, what does that mean? We can do it all night long, which is why I can't wait to watch this thing play out. But what if Illinois takes Ty off the floor and puts Justin Harmon out there? Then all of a sudden you got 5 capable shooters. So just the way that Matt Painter and Brad Underwood, the 2 winningest coaches in the Big Ten over the last 4 years, Brad, of course, having the edge over everybody right now by a few games over Matt. I think it's going to be not only do we have 2 really talented teams, highly ranked teams, 2 very good coaches, and some interesting decisions on their plate in terms of how they want to play this.
Yeah, you're right. We could go back and forth in the matchups all night long. It is very, very interesting to say the least. Are we putting any credence in the fact that Illinois beat Northwestern by 30 when that's the one loss that the Boilermakers have so far this season? Because I understand Purdue had to go on the road. It's not as though Welsh Ryan Arena is some unwinnable space. And Illinois won at home, but they know how to beat Northwestern. Purdue didn't do so earlier this year.
Yeah, we learned about the transitive property maybe back in middle school or high school math class. If is Illinois going to come in here and win by 30 because Illinois beat Northwestern by 30, Northwestern beat Purdue? Of course, we say that in jest, but no, I think there is something to be said by Illinois' performance against a team that, Northwestern has a few different pieces. Chase Audee's no longer there in terms of last year, but that was one of the best defensive teams in the Big Ten, and Illinois obviously routed them as far as their offensive showing. So it's within the realm of possibility that Illinois comes in here and wins. I will say, though, Mackey is just a different animal. This is one of the best environments in all of college basketball. I know it's break in terms of the students. I've seen plenty of college-age kids walking around here. I think the ability to buy some student tickets, I'm sure we'll see here in about an hour or less as far as the real turnout. But why wouldn't you come and support when you got a top 10 game on a Friday night? And if your team does win, you probably got some things to go out and celebrate and hang out with later after that. So I think that it's just different playing on the road. It's typically and traditionally harder to make shots, harder to get in a rhythm with your three-point jump shot when you're playing in a different building. And then on the flip side, you look around the league and usually teams shoot better at home. So Purdue getting going offensively. And I'll give them credit. I think one thing as we take a closer look at the Boilers this year and in comparison to last year, their guard play has been a lot better. Braden Smith and Fletcher Loyer have been able to take a step forward as sophomores. Both have been more efficient with their jump shots. Braden's been great in the pick and roll, ability to hit that mid-range game. If people try to play too aggressively on Edey's rolls to the rim, that open space there for Braden, he's taking really advantage of that. Fletcher Loyer hitting 40% from three this year compared to about 33 last year as well. And on the note of Lance Jones, too, I'll admit, when he made that move to Purdue from SIU, I didn't give a lot of thought in that. I didn't know that he'd be a starter. I didn't know that he'd be a real guy that moves the needle. But he's been a nice complementary scoring piece and a guy that defensively can really get after you and is one of their highest graded out defenders if you look at their metrics. So I know that's a long answer with a lot packed in there, but I think the fact that this is a very good Purdue team, they have depth. They're playing in their home building where they've lost 4 times in Big Ten play the last three plus seasons. There's a lot going up against Illinois, but to your original point, Illinois riding that wave off the Northwestern game. Again, I just think that there is something to be said for momentum, and Illinois should feel like they have it at least going into the start of this game.
Yeah. Going back to the matchups for just a second, you mentioned some of those sophomores that Purdue has who played a lot as freshmen. They didn't just ride the bench and then learn from the veterans in practice or anything like that. They have gained experience, and coming in here as second-year guys, maybe not as raw as normal second-year guys are. They have that experience. However, look at Illinois' starting lineup versus theirs. There's a lot more experience on Illinois' side. Does that matter at all coming into this one? We mentioned how much it has mattered in these past games, but specifically this matchup against Purdue and those talented sophomores that the Boilermakers have, do you see that moving the needle one way or the other?
Maybe not, because the full season now has allowed Braden and both Fletcher to kind of understand how teams attacked them last year, understand what they saw out there in terms of the physicality in the Big Ten. I think that's one thing that Fletcher Loyer, a guy that had his moments last year, hit a game winner at Ohio State, had some good stretches of basketball. But as the season wore on, he was less and less effective. Teams really kind of got the idea of, all right, he's a kind of a slender freshman. If we are physical with him, kind of bump him off his spots and make him uncomfortable, that we can get him out of sorts, out of rhythm. Now, this is a guy that put 27 points on Arizona, but 27 points on Tennessee, one of the most physical and really good defenses out there in the country. So he's had his moments. Braden Smith, I talked about him, just the way he's shooting the mid-range, the way he's operating the pick and roll, a guy that probably just learned how to read the floor at the Big Ten level. And by now, you look at Purdue's schedule, they have the most impressive resume, in my opinion, as anybody in the country in terms of the teams they beat. And they're 5-0 against teams currently ranked in the top 25 on KenPom. So I don't think there's anything in terms of, kind of like wide-eyed, deer in headlights in terms of Purdue versus an experienced Illinois side. I think one thing in terms of the two contrasting against each other, Illinois has more size than those guys. It's a smaller backcourt for Purdue. Can Marcus Damask or Ty Rodgers have a matchup against a Braden Smith, against a Fletcher Loyer, and try to back those guys down? I think that's one thing that Illinois will try to use to their advantage. But in terms of inexperience, I think Purdue is well entrenched in who they are, and Illinois obviously feeling good about what they've established as well.
All right, Illinois coming back out onto the court now from the locker room as they get set for warm-ups. This one about 44 minutes away. I do know that the original tip-off time, not quite 7:30, a little bit later, so maybe don't expect to tune into Fox Sports 1 at 7:30 and anticipate seeing tip right away. I know they like to move big on Friday nights at Fox Sports 1, so give it a little bit of time. But speaking more on how this game can go, matchup-wise, I can already see all of the social media posts talking about the officiating and how Zach Edey gets called versus other big men. We think that Coleman Hawkins is most likely going to be on him to begin this game. What does Coleman have to do to keep in mind, like, hey, Zach Edey gets a lot of fouls. Last year, it was a big deal getting into foul trouble and not being able to play the entire game. How does Illinois stay out of that?
You have to be super disciplined. You got to try to go straight up. And there are gonna be times where he's got deep post position, he's got an angle. Just let him score. Let him to play another play if you're Coleman Hawkins. There's gonna be some of those times that happens. I think also Illinois can help themselves sending double teams, trying to force the ball out of Zach Edey's hands, and also trying to make his catches tough. You don't want him to be able to get the ball within 5 feet of the rim. Sometimes you're going to front him. Sometimes you'll have a guy sag off and try to just mess up that passing lane. So anything you can do to help Coleman, who's given up 6 inches and 75 pounds inside to Zach Edey, will be a benefit. I just think Coleman, we always come back to this in terms of like what he needs as far as his roles within both the offense and defense for Illinois. I think in terms of the matchup offensively for the Illini, he's so crucial to really trying to exploit a potential weakness in Purdue because Edey can't get out and guard him on the perimeter. If Coleman's in foul trouble and you throw out Dane Danger, no real disrespect to Dane because I think Dane's played well here the last 2 games. That's really playing into the comfort zone of Zach and like, okay, I got a big man that's going to operate in the post. He's much shorter than I am, and I'll have him at the other end. You're not putting Zach in a situation to be uncomfortable if he's guarding Dane Danger. I think he is uncomfortable if he's having to draw the matchup of Coleman Hawkins. But yes, revisiting last year's game, I went back and watched it last night. Coleman got 2 fouls in the first half. The Boilers built a 21-point lead in that half. I don't think that's necessarily a coincidence. Of course, there was more that went into it than one guy into foul trouble, but I thought there were ticky-tack, soft foul calls, admittedly. And, I mean, even Brad Underwood mentioned yesterday, not to really defame
no fines to come out because of these comments.
Not to detract from Zach Edey, who is an absolute monster and has only gotten better throughout his career. But, Brad said, I wish that Kobe Coburn got some of the calls that Zach gets. I know that's kind of coach speak, and each guy's going to put on for their own. But Zach draws more fouls than anybody in the country. He's super difficult to defend, let alone stay out of foul trouble in. Illinois' got to hope that Coleman Hawkins can do that because I think he's so key into Illinois making this a situation where it's tough to guard them at the other side of the court.
Illinois has had a top 5 team on their schedule already this season. Marquette comes in against that one. They've already had a top 10 game when they went to Tennessee earlier this year. How much does this game mean for what you are, just your line of thinking for the rest of the schedule? I don't think if Illinois loses in this one, anyone would be particularly surprised because Purdue's Purdue. Purdue is so good this year, and I think that right now they're the class of the Big Ten until someone unseats them. But even in a loss, is there something that you see in this game that you take away that informs the way you think about the rest of this season for the Illini?
I think really only if you win. Sure. I mean, if you get blown out, maybe it reinforces the idea that it's Purdue and then a huge gap between everybody else, that Purdue will run away with this Big Ten title. But this is really the toughest game on your schedule, and you would have said that at the very beginning of this season. So if Illinois loses, even if they get beat by double digits, Purdue covers the spread. I probably won't, without having seen it, and having the context, won't readjust my thoughts too much about the Illini until we see, the return home next week against Michigan State, playing Maryland. There's only one Zach Edey. So if Zach Edey dominates you, that's who that guy is.
Yeah.
If Illinois wins, there's a lot to talk about in terms of Illinois. In terms of, they'd be a game and a half up on Purdue in the Big Ten title chase. Yeah. They'd be almost surely a top 5 team in the country come Monday in the AP poll, also in the net rankings. And I think we'd have a real conversation, more and more of a spotlight magnitude in terms of, can Illinois go to the Final Four? I'm especially if Terrence were to come back at some point. But maybe there'd be more credence into the idea that if Terrence doesn't come back, this team could still go to a Sweet 16. And then obviously you never know what happens after that. So I think that there's a lot that could be learned or just taken off from this game if they win. If they lose, we'd have to see how it plays out. One thing I would say as we kind of think about the matchups, if Purdue successfully says our center will guard Ty Rodgers, and that messes up Illinois' whole offensive scheme, then I would wonder how many more teams try to do that going forward. Would you see on Thursday Matty Sissoko or Carson Cooper for Michigan State, instead of having, okay, I know you'd love to have Tyson Walker get back down by Ty, or you'd love to have A.J. Hogarth, that being Illinois, we're going to throw our center at you, and that's going to mess up your whole Damask booty ball, spacing, Coleman's open for three. I think that's one thing. If Purdue does go that route and does it successfully, Illinois might have to try to reevaluate how to use Ty, and maybe even some situations where you pull him off the court for your offense to have more spacing.
All right. This is a fun one, guys. The energy is starting to get into the building here as more of this upper bowl starts to fill in. I have to say, if you've never been to Mackey Arena, I say get to it.
Get it done.
Get it done. This is one of those places that you have to go to in the Big Ten and in the country. Let's not get to our predictions just yet, Derek, where we went over matchups, went over what this means, we went over how important this game is. But for you, just a couple final thoughts on what you're looking for, some guys that you're going to be looking at in the game that are key to you for both teams if they want to get this one done.
I think one thing that Illinois has done so well here of late that you need to see continue tonight is a fast start. You can't, like last year, they got down, I think, 8-0 real quick, got punched in the mouth, Brad had to call a timeout, and all of a sudden you're reeling. Now, obviously, Illinois, they were down 21 in the first half at halftime, came all the way back and made it a game. So I'm not saying if you have a slow start, you're completely buried, but this building is electric. If you can help yourself with a quicker start, get that confidence going, settle in, maybe don't let the crowd get too amped on a Friday night too early, that could definitely help you. One thing I also think about, I talked about the front end of the game. One thing we haven't seen, especially in life after Terrence Shannon, is what does this team look like in crunch time if they need a basket? They got to have a go-to play, a go-to scorer in a huge spot. They've obviously been blowing teams out of late. Now, the points that Illinois might be chasing later in the game, and it may not be a situation where it's a one or a two possession game. But let's say it is close. I wonder what Brad Underwood dials up in terms of, all right, we're going to go to Coleman here, or we're going to go to Damask here. Here's who we are in late game tight situations, which the Big Ten tends to produce a lot of. So that's one thing I'll really look to learn about this team tonight if we get into those situations. But really, I'm just ready to see this thing tipped up. Enjoy the crowd, and let's watch some great basketball.
All right, predictions now. You guys can get yours done in advance. Give me some time to think of mine. You talk through your decision. What do you think is going to happen in this game?
It's tough because there is a pull towards Illinois' recent form and saying, they can go in here and they can hang. Not that they can't. I mean, they can win. They could flat out win the game, and I could just stop talking there. But I do give credence to the fact that I think that at some point, look, Terrence Shannon means so much to this team. I don't want to take away from what these guys have done here recently, but there feels like there's going to be at some point a moment where you say, okay, that looks like a team that's missing their All-American. It could very well happen tonight, especially because of the venue you're playing at, the caliber of team, the type of big man you're going up against, and so on and so forth. So you also look at the point spread, you see 10.5. It's one of those that, if you're a gambling person, sometimes spreads are like, whoa, that seems a little off, or that point spread stinks a little bit. Well, a lot of times Vegas knows what they're doing. So I say all of that. I think Purdue and Illinois I think Illinois is in the game, but Purdue pulls away late. I got Purdue in a higher scoring affair, 84-74. Okay. 10-point win for the Boilers, but would love to cover this thing if I'm wrong.
I am in a similar vein, and I'm just going to play it safe. I'll lay it out. The safe pick is probably Purdue in this one. I'll play it safe simply because Illinois hasn't shown itself yet in games besides that Florida Atlantic and that neutral site. It hasn't shown that it can win these games. I think it can. but we need to see it, I think, before I make a prediction in their favor. So with that, I'm going to go Purdue 81, Illinois 70. So very close picks. I do think an 11-point win for Purdue. I don't know. Like you said, I would love to be wrong. I think this one will be close. And I'll say this, unlike last year, I think Illinois has a lead at some point. They didn't have a lead. They lost by 5 last year here. They did not have a lead that entire game. So I will say that. I do think they lead at some point.
I think that this is a situation where I think this team, knowing how connected they are, knowing as opposed to last year how much youth you were trying to deal with in terms of those young guards and just overall a squad that had inexperience. This squad is very experienced, very confident, and very connected. So I can see them playing well in this environment against this good team, and yeah, even having the lead at some point. So I'm just really excited to see how this plays out. And man, if they win, what that would mean, it would be a big deal.
All right, Purdue's here. You can hear it.
You can hear
it.
I can't hear you, but you can hear it.
You can hear it in the arena. This one should be a fun one. All right. Last thing, Derek. Tell us how the people at home can spend their time on Illini Enquirer in just the 30 minutes before this one tips off.
As my friend Andy Olson does every game day. He reads 3 keys in a pick
on
Illini Enquirer. Also, Joey Wagner wrote about the connectivity on this team. He also recently did a feature on Justin Harmon, what he's meant with his emergence here of late, taking on a more aggressive scoring role in the absence of Terrence Shannon. We also saw a commit for Brett Bielema and company, tied in out of Murray State. Jeremy Warner has article drawn up on that. There's been plenty of coverage coming there. So Jeremy, Joey, and I are all here to cover this one. We'll have post-game coverage, a post-game podcast. Check out your guys' stuff as well. Let's get this thing rolling.
Yeah, wherever you're watching this, tune in after the game for Brad Underwood's post-game press conference. We'd love to hear his thoughts, one way or the other in this one. It should be very interesting. And then on air tonight on WCIA at 10 o'clock, we'll have highlights of this one. It is Full Court Friday, so we'll get some high school basketball action as well from the Central Illinois viewing area. I'll have my live report here from Mackey Arena in there too. Derek, this is a fun one. Let's hope for some more fun games down this stretch. For Derek, I'm Andy. Thanks for joining us before the game again. 7:30, probably more about 7:40. So if you're a little bit late, it's okay. Fox Sports 1. And be sure to check out the stuff on Illini Enquirer and tune into WCIA after the game. We will see you then. We appreciate you joining us on the pregame show and getting ready. Thank you.